The Beach FM Business Lunch Show, brought to you by PlaceMakers Kapiti Horowhenua. Together we're building New Zealand.
Welcome back to the Business Lunch Show on Beach FM 106.3 with Damian on your Tuesday afternoon. And it is a great honour of mine to welcome back to the show a guest from the first week. He is the General Manager of Umbrella Multimedia. He is Samson Samasoni. G'day, Samson.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm very well. How are you doing at this time, my man?
Oh, yeah, no, getting through. You know, lots going on.
Awesome. Well, a lot of people out there only they know the first interview and they know what you do with Umbrella and Beach, but you've got more than 35 years in PR communications experience. You've worked in many sectors in New Zealand and overseas, and even spent 10 years in the Middle East up to 6 years ago in management consultant areas. So, mate, before we get into what we're going to talk about, let's talk about the Middle East. What can you tell us about your role in there?
Oh, yes, look, I spent 10 years in the Middle East, as you say, mostly as a management consultant for one of the big four consulting agencies, international consulting agencies. Worked in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and Qatar. Qatar I spent 7 years in, but also worked right across the region from Lebanon through to Yemen. So, yeah, look, interesting times, and certainly very interesting to see that side of the world. Got involved in some really interesting projects. Was a lead advisor on developing the national vision for Qatar to 2030, which was a major exercise. And it was a lot of fun, operating at that level. If you look at Qatar, for example, it's got a GDP roughly the same of New Zealand, yet in terms of land area, it only covers from the lower North Island, from the Wairarapa, Horowhenua down to Wellington. That's the land mass it has, and it's the richest country in the world. Wow. Because of the earnings per head of population. It's got about 2 million people there, but there are only about 500,000 nationals. So if you think that, they're obviously developing a lot around the energy sector and particularly liquefied natural gas, making a lot of money and doing quite well, so you end up being involved in some exciting projects. But, I mean, one of the interesting things I found working in the Middle East was really from how important the economy is to them and how fragile things could be is sort of going into meetings and being told to pull out your phone and pull out the batteries, basically take your phone apart and leave it on the table so that you didn't record anything. Or when you've done a pitch, because I ran a UK, the biggest PR agency in Qatar for about 4 years for a UK firm. After you've done a pitch to an agency, don't talk in the elevator on your way down, because consultancies have lost contracts that way because they've made comments about it. And, of course, there are microphones and cameras in some of the elevators. Or don't even talk when you're in a cab because things get back to people because taxi drivers are very good at reporting what's going on. So even when we had conversations about things, often we're talking code so that we were just mindful about the whole thing. But I think it just brought home how, that whole sector and the economy there, how it was reliant on doing business as well as it could, and brought home the realities of what's involved with these billion-dollar industries.
Wow.
That's a rough overview, a couple of things.
Wow. It must have been pretty scary stuff at times, though, no?
Not really. I mean, there was a period when first moved into Saudi Arabia about 15 years ago when there were about 15, 16 years ago, there were some attacks near the compound that we lived in. Westerners tend to live in compounds. But we moved into Bahrain, which was a lot freer at the time. I don't know, it's just you're in a different reality, I guess. So So you put up with things, and even when the Iraq War and other things were on, there were, skirmishes around the place where people ring up, oh, how is it? How is it? Can you hear the bombs? I mean, it's like in another country, it's like asking whether in New Zealand whether you can hear military activity in Australia. It's that kind of distance. But of course, from New Zealand, it's difficult to get an idea of exactly the sizes of the countries and their geography, of course.
Of course.
But tell you what, I'm really one of the best professional experiences I had was actually working in the Middle East for 10 years. It's quite amazing when budgets don't become the major concern.
Yeah.
The main issue is what's the idea, what's the challenge, how are we going to overcome it, particularly in the communications arena, and then what resources will it take to make it happen. Whereas a lot of things, a lot of jobs you get given, right, got great solutions, great ideas, but then there are budget constraints. So budget was never really a constraint for a lot of the activities and work that we did in the Middle East.
Wow. I mean, you do a marketing campaign here. There's the first thing you start with is the budget and work everything into that. So having a blank check would have been fun at times in that profession, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when you're working for clients like the Sovereign Wealth Fund for Qatar, they're very mindful of it, but at the end of the day, what they're wanting is results and to achieve their objectives. Qatar Foundation was a major client. This is a charitable trust that was set up by the former Emir of Qatar, huge organisation. I mean, just the offices and accommodation blocks took up 10% of the land area of the capital city. So that gives you some idea of physical size of it. So you can imagine what the budget, I think the budget rivaled government, government agencies in terms of the size of this charitable trust. So they were a major client of ours, and we did some amazing work with them and helped them achieve their communication marketing objectives.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. What were the biggest learnings you took away from that time in the Middle East?
That people are the same everywhere. That sounds like a Stevie or Paul McCartney. I can't remember what it is. But I mean, I was working in the Pacific at the time, so I went from working for a UNDP project in Samoa to Saudi Arabia. Not knowing exactly what it was going to be like. It was the first trip to the Middle East or working in a Muslim country, if you like. Sure, it was completely different, but there were so many elements that were just the same. People cared about families. Yes, religion, as it is in Samoa, was a very strong element and underpinned the cultural things. In this case, it was the religion was Islam rather than Christianity. But family, religion, and everyone just trying to do well by each other. So the sort of tensions that obviously exist and people are well aware of, at a human person-to-person level, you really didn't feel that, and it was, made some lifelong friendships out of the time in the Middle East.
Awesome. That's brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Now, Samson, we started the business show 5 weeks ago. We've been talking business. We've been talking to local business. We've been talking to experts. But, down in Lindale Village, there is a multimedia company that does marketing, does videos, does radio, does production. And that's us. So how about we share from the point of Umbrella Multimedia and your 35 years experience in the PR and communications field, how about we share some marketing tips for our great region?
Yeah, look, definitely. I mean, with the work we've done over the years, but also more recently be back in New Zealand and working with particularly small to medium-sized enterprises. I've got some ideas about the sort of common things that I get asked about or that I come across. And I guess one of the main things about businesses of this size is the person has gone into the business because they've got a passion for that industry, that area, that profession. But then they realise they have to also have to know about their own marketing and how to promote things, public relations, these sorts of things. So they're not necessarily experts on it, but they find that they have to do it because resources might be scarce or whatever the case may be. So look, I've got a few tips I want to share, and perhaps I'll just launch into the first one.
Amazing.
Right now, obviously, Yeah, right now, obviously, social media is key, and people are finding that being online is an important part of their marketing mix. So one thing I want to emphasize, because I come across it all the time, is just to remind people that it's called social media for a reason. So quite often businesses, what they do is they put a post on Facebook to their, say, 1,000 followers or people who've liked their page, and sit back and think, right, I've just promoted it to 1,000 people. Well, of course, the reality is on Facebook, it's only gone initially to 5% of those people. So the 1,000 people you thought you were communicating with, you're actually, in terms of the way the Facebook algorithm works, only getting to initially about 550 people. What the algorithm does is it slowly releases your post depending on how engaging it is. If that makes sense. So if people start liking and doing things and commenting on your post, and then Facebook sort of says, oh, okay, people are finding this really interesting, so we'll release it a little bit more. Then we'll release a little bit more. So that's how you eventually might get to your 1,000. But it's actually highly unlikely you'll get to all of your followers. But it's not so. But what you've got to do in response is also respond and engage with your followers and likes, because the algorithm looks at that and thinks, okay, this business owner is engaging with the audience. So yeah, look, definitely let's put it out there a little bit more. But if you don't react or do anything, then the algorithm's going to say, well, what's the point? This business person doesn't care about their own posts, so why should we? It's almost that kind of response. So that's why I really emphasize it's called social for a reason, because you have to engage and commit to reacting and responding to the people who have liked or getting involved with your posts.
Good to know. I didn't know it was 5%. You'd hope that 5% is the engaging 5%.
You'd hope so, yeah. So that's what it tends to do. And there are other tricks in terms of how you write your post and so on. But look, we won't go into that for now. But just to start off by saying, yeah, think that it's actually only go to 5%, and then for it to go any further, it's actually going to be down to you and your followers.
Awesome. Okay.
Another tip that I think is really useful is people not quite understanding the value of video these days. Particularly with social media, video is king. So again, with this, let's take Facebook. Facebook will prioritize posts that have a video component to it. So whether business people like it or not, they're going to have to know how to do video if they're going to develop engaging posts and be able to market their product and services. And look, it doesn't have to be, really flash videos, but if you put together a video just on your phone, and most phones can do high definition these days, and if you get some tips on how to do that, then your posts are going to be more engaging, and then Facebook is going to say, in this case, I'm going to release that a bit more because they've gone to the trouble of using video, and we know that video is key. So what I'd suggest to business people is they definitely develop some video skills within their workforce so that they can regularly update and put out their messages that have video content.
Brilliant. Video is key. Nice.
Great. Well, the third tip I got is putting your eggs in several baskets. What I found sometimes is that people say, okay, I want to try a bit of radio now because my newspaper ad didn't work. Oh, then they say, okay, now maybe I'll concentrate on social media now instead of radio. What I suggest that business people look at is that you've got to have an integrated marketing mix. You've got to have a mix of things that are going on, and you've got to understand what each one is doing. So, for example, radio tends to be the thing that needs to be repeated quite regularly so that people get the brand awareness. They get to understand who you are, what you do, and so it's good for it to be repeated regularly. Whereas your social media things, because that actually lands right in front of the person's face and they can read it or see it on video, that's where you're going to display a little bit more detail, a bit more personality about your business. That's where people are going to get that flavour. And then newspaper has its role because obviously that gets out to a certain market who may not have access online and in other places. So you've really got to think about, if I've got a budget of $1,000, I'm going to put some into social media, some into radio, some into newspaper, some into direct advertising, whatever it might be. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Think of several baskets, but make sure they all align and they work together as an integrated campaign.
Excellent. Number 3. Don't put all your eggs in. Put your eggs in several baskets. Brilliant. Number 4.
Definitely. So the number 4 is this thing of, and it's particularly pertinent to social media, understanding the personality of your business. So quite often you've got a small business owner who gets onto social media, for example. Let's use Facebook again. And they start doing posts, but what they're doing is they're posting as themselves, Joe Blogs, rather than posting as their business.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So the business has if you think about the business as having a personality, it's got an image, it's got a way that it wants to present itself. You know, you might even go to think, is my business more feminine than it is masculine? You know, so that's going to help dictate how you write your posts and the sort of material that you put out there. So you might be, let's say, a guy in an area where, in a sector where most of your customers might be women. So a guy writing a post is obviously going to do it in a very different way. But if you think about it from the personality of your business, you're going to write that post in a very different way, and you're going to post different sorts of things based on the personality of your business. So guess what I'm saying is, think that the two are the same. Your business has its own personality, its own characteristics, and that's what you want people to see, and don't think about it as being you yourself. So that's my 4th tip.
Separate the two. Excellent. And lucky number 5.
Well, the last major one is, I guess it's this thing of people do a lot of marketing, and they do put their advertisements and materials together, but at the end of the day, some of it is not clear about what's the call to action, and how can I be creative about the way that call to action needs to come across. So my call to action, what I'm saying is that there is a purpose for your advertising, your marketing. So how do you want people to react or act as a result of your marketing? So think about that right from the start. You know, I'm putting my marketing because I want people to come to my shop. So how are you going to couch that call to action, which is going to drive them to it? Obviously, this is why people do sales and they do various other things. But if you get really creative about how you put your call to action together, or the sort of advertising you do, then it's more likely that people will remember it. I mean, I remember a really simple TV commercial, cheap as anything, that used to play many, many years ago. You might remember this, where someone would be walking along with their bag, and then the announcer would say, "Where'd you get your bag from?" And then the person would say, "Lands for Bags, of course."
Of course. Yeah.
Really simple, and because it's saying, "Where did you get your bag?" Lands for Bags. It's promoting that thing of, if I want a bag, I'm going to go to Lands for Bags, and it's short, simple, concise, and it's just one of those things that stuck with you. So when you're thinking about getting a bag next time, you know, of course, it's going to be Lands for Bags. That's where you're going to go to first. And this is why jingles and those sorts of things, you know, because they're creative, they're memorable. You know, on beach, of course, there are some phone numbers that you just remember automatically because it's in a good little jingle song that you just hum along with. Yeah. But be clear about what you're asking the customer to do in response to your marketing, and then make it as creative as you can. So be clear about what your call to action is, and try to make it as creative as you can.
Brilliant. Those are some pretty great 5 tips there. It's called Social Media was 1. Video is king. 2. Put your eggs in several baskets. 3. What personality is your business? is for, and have a call to action. Be creative. Number 5, Samson, thank you so much for those 5 tips.
Thanks, Damon. Have a great afternoon.
Oh, mate. Well, last question always is, I know where to find you, but where can the people find you, and how can they get in touch if they've got any questions?
Oh, they can just email us at info@umbrella-multimedia.com, and or get in touch with us through Beach FM as well. So, we're easy to find up there at Lindale. We're not fully back in the office yet, but we'll be there very soon. And in the meantime, those are the ways to contact us.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Samson. Go well, my friend, and we'll catch up soon.
Indeed. Thanks a lot, Damon. Cheers.